everyone. Today I want to talk about the GoPro Hero 8 and the problem we have when we try to attach an ND filter to this new camera, as well as the unique solution that camerabutter has come up with to solve that problem. So as you know by now, the GoPro Hero 8 does not come with a replaceable lens, and they've also changed the design around this lens area so you can no longer easily attach ND filters to it. In the past, on the GoPro Hero 5, 6, and 7, I had a TBS jello guard that I would stick into this TPU mount, and I would snap this TPU mount on the front of the GoPro. But with this new design, that is no longer an option. So when I got the GoPro Hero 8, the first thing I did was print out a new TPU mount, and this TPU mount has a slot right here where you can put your TBS jello guard into it and it'll cover up the front of the GoPro. The problem I had was that the jello guard was still too far away from the lens, and when you're using super view, the corners of the image were still visible, and I'd have to crop the video more than I wanted to, and that reduces quality. So I discovered camerabutter, this company here from Canada, who has a relatively unique solution to this problem. They have a ND filter, or a series of ND filters, and a camera protector guard now that has this little layer of sticky, rubbery stuff that you can drop onto your GoPro Hero, stick it on there really well, and it will not fly off, or will not fall off easily, even if you've got this attached to your FPV drone and crash, which I actually tested out, not directly on purpose, but I did, and so far it's held up. So in this video, I want to do a quick review of camerabutter and how well that's working for me, and see if it works well for you. So since I'm here in Minnesota and it's really cold right now, my first concern was that this little rubbery gasket that helps hold it onto the lens wouldn't work well enough in really cold temperatures. So I brought it outside and did a quick test. Okay, so now I want to test this camerabutter lens out here in the cold. I'm a little concerned that that sticky adhesive isn't going to work as well when it's well below freezing. So today it's about 15, 16 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and I'm going to just let the camera sit out here for a couple hours and see if it stays on. Okay, so now this GoPro's been sitting out here in the cold. It's still below, I don't know, it's like 18 degrees Fahrenheit or something. So it's well below freezing, and I'm curious to see if this camerabutter lens, the adhesive, still works just as well at this cold temperature. Well, if I stick my finger under it, you probably can't hear me because it's making lots of noise. The lens still seems to be very well stuck on there, so good job, camerabutter. I think this is definitely usable in below freezing temperatures. Alright, I'm back at home now editing this video and reviewing the footage and trying to see how well it looks, and my first impression is it looks really good. So while you're sitting here watching this flight, pay close attention to little things. I'm noticing some differences to when I'm flying without the ND filter. Like right there, if you notice in the sun, I'm getting a little bit of that lens flare effect. I think it looks pretty good, but it's sort of a different color, and I've never noticed it quite the same way with a jello guard or without any ND filter. I'm pretty sure any ND filter will cause some of the lens flare sort of effects like that, but each one seems to be a little bit different. And also look closely in the corners. Every once in a while, I think I can see a little bit of vignetting or sort of a shadow. And sometimes, if the sunlight hits it just right, I can see a little bit of a golden color in some of the corners. But overall, I think it's really good. It's really hard to tell that there's any ND filter on this GoPro at all. And I think it looks just stellar. The other thing I should mention while you're watching this flight video is exactly what settings the GoPro was at while this was being recorded. So the resolution was 2.7K. It was 60 frames per second, and Super View was enabled. Hypersmooth is on. The bit rate is set to high. I had the shutter set to auto. The ISO min and ISO max are at 100. EV compensation is 0. My white balance was set to auto. Oh, I usually like having white balance set to a specific value. I should change that. I've noticed on some of my videos that the white balance will change spontaneously in the middle of the video, and that just makes it look terrible. But I'll continue here. The sharpness was set to medium, and I'm using ProTune, all ProTune settings. So the color was set to flat, and let's see, I think that is all of the important settings. And that's pretty much what I've always used in the past, and it works really well for me, and it produces pretty decent looking videos for YouTube. So let's see, is there anything else I need to say? Oh, I did do a tiny bit of color grading on this because I was using ProTune flat. So I did go through in my Final Cut editor, and I adjusted the black point a little bit. I adjusted the saturation quite a bit. I boosted the saturation up a lot because GoPro flat color obviously has very flat colors, and you need to boost the saturation for it to look good again. But other than a few minor tweaks like that, I didn't use any LUT or any fancy color grading, just those few minor changes that I mentioned there. Otherwise, that's about it. And that's exactly what I would have done with any other ND filter. And I guess my initial impressions are that this is probably the perfect, or at least the best ND filter I have tried with a GoPro Hero 8, just because it sticks right onto the lens and it's not permanent. There are some stick-on ND filters that you're expected to leave them on all the time, and I don't fly in the same lighting conditions all the time, so I like to have a variety of ND filters. And in this case, camerabutter has ND filters from 4 to 32. This flight was done with an ND16 filter, and it looks like it was probably the right choice for these conditions. I can see that there's some motion blur, especially like in this part here when I get low down to the parking lot. It looks about perfect for what I would like it to be. It's not too blurry, it's not too sharp, and yeah, I'm at a loss for what else to tell you. Just watch the rest of the video and leave some comments if you think that you noticed anything in this video that I forgot to mention. I'm also curious if you have tried any other ND filters for a GoPro Hero 8. I think there are some that sort of come with a ability to sort of snap a cover over the entire GoPro, but that makes it way more difficult to connect it to your drone, to put it into like a 3D printed TPU case or anything like that. But if you've tried something and you really liked it, definitely let me know. I'll maybe take a look at those too. Oops, I forgot to use Kitty Hawk to use Lance to get authorization to fly here, so I better do that now. And like I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, I did do an accidental crash test to verify that the camerabutter ND filter will stay on even in a crash where you end up landing on the road. Whoops. Well, the ND filter held on. That's sweet. Everything else looks good too. There's where I hit the ground. Flew over there, landed just at the edge of the road. All right, well, hopefully it's good to fly. Camerabutter is still on the camera even though I crashed and it's really cold outside and the sunset's beautiful, so I don't know, I guess I call it a success, and hopefully the video footage looked great. So earlier today it was a beautiful bright sunny winter day, and with all the new snow, well, newish snow on the ground, it was super bright out. Thought perfect time to go test out the camerabutter ND filter, and of course I started charging my batteries, and by the time the batteries were done charging, as you can see, clouds moved in, and it's not quite the same day I thought it was. Actually, if you look way over there in the distance, you can still see the clear blue sky that was here not too long ago. But I'm going to make the most of it. I got the batteries charged. I'm going to fly anyway, and maybe this will be a good chance to try out a couple of different varieties of the different strengths of the ND filter. I've got an ND16 on here right now. I think I've got an ND8 in my bag, and I left the ND4 at home. But I'll give it a shot and see how it goes. All right, now it looks like the sun's back out, for at least for a little bit, so I guess I'll keep the ND16 filter on here for now. So this is a second example of what it looks like with the ND16 camerabutter filter on my GoPro Hero 8. And the lighting conditions are pretty similar to the previous video, or previous flight video that you saw earlier in this video. There's a little bit more clouds, but the sun is still out. This ground is still pretty well covered by white snow. So I feel like the ND16 is still the right choice. You could almost maybe argue that an ND32 would be required if it was this brighter, if it was any brighter than this out there. But I don't have an ND32 at the moment. I do have an ND16, however, so that is what's on there. The pamphlet that came in the box of my shipment from camerabutter also has a lot of good information on it to help you choose the correct ND filter based on your conditions. So in here it says, for example, if you're flying in very bright sunlight, so kind of like this, but if the sun was a little bit higher in the sky, but it's a little bit unique because the extra white on the ground makes it actually brighter out, or at least brighter for the camera a little bit. So they say for very bright sun, you need an ND32. For normal average sunny day, you'd want an ND16. And if you had a partially cloudy day, you'd want an ND8. And then when you get to cloudy and lower light conditions, so maybe right at sunset or a little bit after, maybe even, you would want an ND4. And then obviously if you get into night and very dark scenes, then you don't want an ND filter on your GoPro at all. So I touched on this a little bit already, but the thing that really makes camerabutter unique is the adhesive that they use, this like rubbery gasket sticky material that connects the ND filter onto the front of the GoPro Hero 8. And one of the unique things about it is that it is really sticky, and it really does hold the ND filter on there very well. But according to their documentation, it can get dirty. Obviously, if you crash in a bunch of dirt, or if you peel it off or you drop it on the floor and it gets all dirty, you can apparently just wash it in the sink with a little bit of soapy water and it'll return back to its super sticky form, and then you can reuse it. I think also if you crash and somehow manage to break your camerabutter, you can still salvage the sticky parts and reuse that in the future. Well, it looks like maybe the sun's gone probably for good now, so I'm going to try taking off this ND16 filter and try putting on an ND8 and see how that looks. And also just sort of testing the process of peeling off a camerabutter filter and putting a new one on. The sticky part was staying on the GoPro. That's not what I want it to do. I want to take the sticky part off the GoPro with the filter. No. Well, the little sticky plastic stuff here definitely wanted to stay on the GoPro more than it wanted to stay on the ND filter. But maybe that has to do with it's like 30 degrees outside right now. Maybe the GoPro was warmer than the filter. All right, sort of sticking that back on there. Put that back in the box and switch to an ND8 filter instead. Alright, where are you, ND8? I know you're in here. I saw you earlier. There it is. Camerabutter ND8. And to apply this, first I take this little thin layer of plastic off of the backing. Of course, it won't come off my finger now that it's statically clinging to me. Okay, time to put this onto the Hero 8. Trying to get it as centered as possible. And if that looks good, I press it all around the edges. And now that it's on there, I can take off the little plastic coating, protective coating. And there we go. Now I should have an ND8 filter on there instead. Okay, time to fly with the ND8 filter for the first time. And the lighting conditions are probably about right for this one, but we'll see. All right, so as I said, this is now flying with the ND8 camerabutter ND filter on. And I chose that because, according to the documentation, partly cloudy says ND8 should be the right choice. And as you can see there, the sun is no longer directly out. It's hiding behind the clouds. So it's a partly cloudy situation. I think ND8 is probably the right choice. And here when I fly kind of lower to the ground and you start to see some of the motion blur, I think that was the right call. So as you're sitting here watching the rest of this ND8 flight, I might as well use this time to wrap up my review. And I don't know what else to really say. The camerabutter seems to be the best choice at the moment, at least the best thing I've used so far on a GoPro Hero 8. Now that they changed the design and the other forms of ND filters just don't seem to work as well, I really love the idea of just being able to slap on and stick on this ND filter to the front of the Hero 8, not have to worry about having a specific TPU printout that you can use something like a TBS Jello Guard and slide in there. I've had problems with those when I was using the GoPro Hero 7 and the TPU mount that was sort of snapped onto the front. In light crashes or bumping into trees or anything, those would pop off, and that was probably my fault for how I printed them or didn't have them attached really tightly. But in this case, it should stay on very well, and it also acts as a decent lens protector. I think they say it's made out of hardened glass, and I don't have one, but they also make a clear version, which is intended to be used as just a lens protector, which I think is also a very great idea. And they've got a video on their website where they're showing dropping a marble or some ball bearing on it and showing how much stronger these lenses are than other lens protectors. So to finish out my review, about all I can say is that if you are in the market for an ND filter for your GoPro Hero 8, and especially if you are putting your GoPro Hero 8 on a drone like I do, an FPV drone like this, flying it around in dangerous locations, I highly recommend this camerabutter variety of ND filters. And I'll stick a Amazon affiliate link down in the description, and if you want to buy one too, that's a great place to get them. Oh, and before I go, I should probably also mention that the price of the camerabutter ND filters is pretty reasonable too. They're $9.99 each, and they also have a 3-pack, which is what I got, with a ND 4, 8, and 16 in it, and that comes out to, I think it was $24.99. So if you're in the market for these, getting that 3-pack is a pretty good way to go. And I also bought an extra ND16 because that's my most used filter, and I figured I will most likely crash and break it at least once, and then I wanted at least one spare to have in my bag with me. So anyway, thanks for watching, and catch you next time.